So, I've been thinking. Shocking, I know. I had a really good time making the last What If video about the other half of the MCU dusting. By the way, shameless plug if you haven't seen that video, the link will be in the description below. But anyways, shameless promotion on my end. Yeah, I had a really great time thinking about that concept and bringing it to life through that video. And so I got to thinking, what other scenarios would be really interesting to explore if you changed one little thing? Like, what one little change would totally upend the entire universe or that entire fictional world as we know it? And to be honest, there are a couple obvious ones, right? But I was really more interested in the subtler changes that you could make to a film that would completely change it for good. And in so thinking, I came upon a realization and a thought that really, really interested me. And when I went down that rabbit hole, I found some really, really interesting plot lines and threads that I wanted to share with you guys. So here's a thought. What if, in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, what if Darth Maul had actually died? But you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's not that big of a change, is it? And on the surface, it doesn't really seem like it is. But honestly, you'd be surprised. Because once I went down that rabbit hole, I realized that it changed almost everything for almost the entire Star Wars saga. So in today's episode of What If, I'm going to explore what would have happened to the entire Star Wars Skywalker saga if Darth Maul had died in Episode 1. If you'd like to see more of these What If videos, then please let me know in the comments down below. And make sure to subscribe to stay tuned for more of these videos that are coming on the way. If you guys have any other suggestions on any other What If videos or just videos in general that you want me to do, then please let me know in the comments, because honestly, this channel has just kind of devolved into a Star Wars Marvel channel, which I'm fine with, as long as you guys are as well. With all that out of the way, let's get started. So I guess the best place to start with this would be the beginning. So let's backtrack a little bit here. The character of Darth Maul was first introduced in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and he was sort of this shadowy Sith apprentice to Darth Sidious. However, we really didn't get to know a lot about him, and before we knew it, he was cut in half, and that was that. Now, I think it's pretty clear that in 1999, George Lucas had pretty much zero intention to bring this character back. He was a one and done. However, later, as many diehard Star Wars fans will know, Darth Maul made a triumphant return in Star Wars The Clone Wars. From there on out, he would have a significant presence in the rest of Clone Wars, as well as in the Star Wars Rebels, until he met his unfortunate demise, and he would even have an appearance in another film in Solo: A Star Wars Story. But back in 1999 and all the way up to Revenge of the Sith in 2005, yeah, fans thought he was pretty much dead. So again, let's backtrack a little bit here. So Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are fighting him, and then Obi-Wan cuts him in half after Darth Maul kills Qui-Gon Jinn, and he falls down the shaft. Honestly, if you think about it, we could just do one of these videos with Palpatine too, like what if he had actually died in Return of the Jedi, since he's alive in The Rise of Skywalker. But that wouldn't be that interesting, because it would just be me rewriting The Rise of Skywalker and... Anyways, by all accounts, and from what it looks like, again, to reiterate, it seemed like Darth Maul was going to be dead, and that was it. And again, like I mentioned before, Dave Filoni comes back and revives him, and now he's a huge presence in the Star Wars universe, which is why his actual death would mean a lot to the story. So, back to the question. What if Maul had just, died? Let's track this now. From the end of The Phantom Menace to the beginning of the Clone Wars, this honestly wouldn't have any ramifications, like probably none, on anything important. Because in canon, after he quote-unquote dies, Maul gets shipped off to some junkyard and goes crazy. So, yeah, from The Phantom Menace to the beginning of the Clone Wars, he doesn't really do anything, and he doesn't appear until around seasons 3 or 4 in Star Wars The Clone Wars. So the Clone Wars begins as it had been orchestrated to, and Palpatine is grooming Anakin as usual and all of that sort of stuff. And basically everything is following the same trajectory at this point. However, it isn't until the middle of the Clone Wars when things start to really diverge. Because you'd be surprised. I think the key to all of this is Duchess Satine. Hear me out on this one. I think Maul's death doesn't really matter until we get to the Obi-Wan Satine reunion and reconnection. Because remember, Obi-Wan explicitly said to her, "Had you given the word, I would have left the Order." This is super, super important. And as we all know in the canon, well, she dies, and to the hands of Darth Maul. But now in this scenario, Darth Maul isn't here, and therefore she wasn't going to die at his hands. So let's assume that Death Watch, the cult on Mandalore, is going to stick around for a while. It's an assumption that I'm going to make, and it's going to be very important for the story. I think, at least. In this sense, then, you would have Satine, who would be rescued by Obi-Wan, and they would be fleeing from this Death Watch cult. Now, at this point in the story, Darth Maul would have broken in, and he would have killed Pre Vizsla, and then he would have killed Duchess Satine, and then he would have gotten captured by Emperor Palpatine, all of that stuff. But in this scenario, Death Watch is on top, and it's going to stay on top. And remember, Pre Vizsla hated Duchess Satine's ways, her pacifist ideals. So I'm going to make another assumption that Duchess Satine is not going to make it on Mandalore, and she feels that she needs to flee the planet with Obi-Wan. Now here's the catch. This is when she tells Obi-Wan that I want you to leave the Jedi Order. She gives him that kind of ultimatum of, you can come with me as long as you leave the Jedi Order, and we can start a life together. Because again, Darth Maul is out of the picture. And now all of a sudden, Obi-Wan is faced with a choice. Do I stay with the Jedi Order and to my allegiances, or do I go with the love of my life? And honestly, I think the choice is pretty clear for him. I think he leaves. If you know some extensive canon, then you know that Qui-Gon Jinn wasn't exactly the most conventional Jedi. He questioned a lot of things, and he was actually the one who invented the Force Ghost technique. I think it's only natural that Obi-Wan had his own preservations, I guess, against the Jedi Council, especially being trained under Master Qui-Gon Jinn. After all, it's not just Anakin who acts like that. He must have learned it from somewhere, right? He was being trained by Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I really do believe that Obi-Wan has his own reservations against the Council and against their ways, which is why he's one of the remaining Jedi, along with Yoda. So now all of a sudden Obi-Wan decides to abandon the Jedi Council, denying their ways, and he goes off with Satine, proclaiming his love for her. Now, the next question is, where does this leave young Anakin Skywalker, who is currently hiding his marriage with Padme Amidala? Well, I think, naturally, he would have left as well. Because honestly, throughout the entirety of the prequel trilogy, he was just kind of waiting for that push, right? To leave the Jedi Order. And to be honest, it doesn't necessarily have to be just through becoming a Sith, right? If Obi-Wan decides to leave the Jedi Order, and obviously he's not going to become a Sith, he's just leaving, then I think Anakin would see that as his opportunity as well. And so honestly, I think after seeing Obi-Wan leave, his master, his friend, the person he trusts the most, I think he's going to leave the Order as well. And all of a sudden, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker are out of commission. I'm going to just say for fun, because this is the part of the video where I can just make up things, that they're going to go to Tatooine, because Obi-Wan was there, obviously in the original canon, and Anakin Skywalker goes there, and he was born there, so yeah, I think it makes sense that they go to Tatooine. And by the way, this isn't just going to send ripples throughout the Jedi Council. Padme Amidala and Duchess Satine are very, very powerful people in their own right. Padme is a very, very influential senator, and of course Duchess Satine is the ruler of Mandalore, or she was at the very least. So this kind of opens the door for Death Watch to completely take over. But at this point, Obi-Wan and Anakin don't really care, and neither do Satine and Padme, so they just kind of go off into hiding. And we're going to leave them there for now. Now, the next logical question that I have is, what happens to Ahsoka? And this is where things get interesting as well, because I think Ahsoka, though conflicted about the Jedi ideals, as you'll see later when she's exiled from the Jedi Order, isn't quite as radical as these two. Maybe not yet. Maybe it's the fact that she's still young and still a Padawan, but still. Her ideals are still aligned with the Jedi Council in most regards. And for funsies, we're just going to say that Plo Koon's going to be her new master because I like Plo Koon and they seem to have a really strong connection in the series. So yeah, those two. And also, side note, can you just imagine how much Palpatine's freaking out right now? Because his protege, Anakin Skywalker, just disappears, goes off the grid. Like his entire plan has just been upheaved, but we'll get back to that later. Anyways, on that note, I would imagine that he would be sending out Dooku and Grievous to go find him, because Anakin is still part of his plans, but his plans will change, and I'll get back to that again later. So now the events of the Clone Wars are going to transpire pretty similarly to that of the original canon, right? I mean, Maul is a very important part, but there are other things going on in the Clone Wars, so those are going to continue. And then, what's going to happen is that Ahsoka is going to get framed, because that event has very little to do with Darth Maul, right? So Ahsoka gets framed. Here's the interesting thing, though. Anakin Skywalker is no longer there to protect her and to find out that Barriss was the one who did it the entire time. That was a very, very pivotal plot point in that entire arc. The fact that Anakin Skywalker was willing to defend her and stand up for her and do what was right, but he's no longer there. So all of a sudden, Ahsoka Tano is wrongly accused and nobody is there to defend her, and then she's banished from the Jedi Order. Now this is different, and I want you guys to pay attention to this because it's a very subtle but key difference. In the original canon, Ahsoka was, yes, banished at first, but then once she was redeemed, she was offered a place back in the Jedi Order, but she refused and walked away of her own accord. In this scenario, before she's even given a chance to defend herself, she's banished outright from the Jedi Order without them allowing her to give a defense. And what does that do? That creates a bitterness and anger in her heart against the Jedi. And this is where Palpatine strikes. Because all of a sudden, and remember, he was at the proceedings, he was at the trial of Ahsoka Tano, he knows about her. All of a sudden, he realizes that while yes, Ahsoka Tano may not be as powerful as Anakin Skywalker, because of course Anakin Skywalker is the chosen one, he senses that he can train a new apprentice in a certain way, and he can sort of salvage the plan and continue forward with building the Galactic Empire. Because again, while Palpatine would have loved to have Vader, I'm sure, he doesn't necessarily need him to build up his galactic empire, right? He just kind of needs an assassin or someone to go out and do his dirty work. But the empire was going to build itself with or without Vader. So in this story, Palpatine goes to Ahsoka shortly after her banishment, and he convinces her to join him on the dark side. And this works because she's fueled with embitterment towards the Jedi, and also towards her master because Anakin just left. He abandoned her, and that's going to hurt. I imagine in this scenario, though, that Ahsoka is more of an Inquisitor type of character rather than just a Sith apprentice, because again, she's not that powerful, but she's going to be very useful to Palpatine later. And also, side note, Dooku and Grievous are still there. I kind of want Grievous to stick around because I like Grievous, and I think he has a place in Palpatine's plans for the Empire. Because, again, Palpatine wasn't the one who ordered him killed. Obi-Wan was the one who killed him. But Dooku, I don't think has that much relevance in this story. So I think Ahsoka is going to be sent out to kill him, and I think she will. So, yeah, there's that. Now, before we move on any further to Order 66, I think we got to backtrack a little bit here, because there is one character that I want to talk about that I haven't mentioned yet. And that is Savage Opress. Now, in this scenario, Savage doesn't have a brother, because in the original canon, his brother was Maul. But in this scenario, no, he doesn't have a brother. But if you remember in the Clone Wars, before he was ever tasked to go find his brother by Mother Talzin, he was sent to assassinate Count Dooku by Asajj Ventress. All of that happened without Maul ever being part of that scenario, and I think that still will. He's going to be sent out to assassinate Dooku, it's going to fail, and then he's going to head back to Dathomir to Mother Talzin. This time, however, Mother Talzin is not going to tell him to go find Maul. I think what would be really interesting instead is because now that Savage Opress has force powers, I think, and has skills with the lightsaber, she's going to find some use for him. I would imagine that Mother Talzin, seeing the opportunity to overthrow Dooku once and for all, would send Savage back to his home so that he could train the rest of his Zabrak brothers, and they could create a sort of force-sensitive Sith army on their own, like a little Sith cult, I guess. So that's going to be kind of happening in the background. So now, Order 66 is still going to happen, because that was the plan all along, right? This time, though, it's just not going to happen with Vader. It's more going to happen with Ahsoka, being the Inquisitor, hunting down Jedi, all that sort of stuff. And as we know, Obi-Wan and Anakin are kind of off doing their own thing, so they're not going to be really affected by this, though they're going to hear about the news, right? And, of course, in this scenario, Yoda survives. Because in the original canon, he faces Palpatine, he survives, so yeah, he's going to make it through. He's going to go into exile, and he's going to search for Obi-Wan and Anakin. They're going to meet up, they're going to find each other, all that sort of stuff. So essentially, it's kind of similar in the sense that Yoda and Obi-Wan are in exile, but now this time they have Anakin, who, by the way, has just had 2 children, very strong in the Force, Luke and Leia, with Padme, who I would assume is not going to die in this scenario, though, to be quite honest with you guys, she's not going to play a major role in the rest of this video, but still. Wanted to point that out for continuity's sake. And now things are going to get set into motion, right? Because the Empire is on the rise. But this time, it's going to be met with some serious opposition, unlike the last time. Because in the original canon, Palpatine just kind of rises to power, he's unchallenged and all of that. But this time, we have some opposing factions. Remember that Death Watch is still around, and so is this Zabrak army of Force-sensitive warriors. And on top of that, we still have Kanan and Hera and Sabine and Ezra Bridger. Because, yeah, Maul doesn't really affect them until later on, right? So we have the Rebels, we have the Death Watch, and we have the Zabraks. And then we have the Empire. So it's not going to be as quote-unquote peaceful as the Empire wanted it to be. There's going to be still kind of a galactic civil war in a certain sense. All that to say is that the Empire is going to be weak, relatively speaking. And now Palpatine has Ahsoka by his side. And she's sort of the Grand Inquisitor, I guess. So she's going to be sent out to destroy all the remaining Jedi. Which means that she's actually going to be part of the Rebels story, but this time as the villain, I think. So I think we could assume that these rebels would somehow make it to Malachor, I guess, searching for a Sith holocron or whatever, but this time they're not met by Vader, they're met by Ahsoka and the Inquisitors. And this time they don't have Ahsoka's help or Maul's help. So I would actually assume that the rebels, Kanan, Ezra, Sabine, Hera, they would actually all die, because I think that Ahsoka would pretty much mow them down. And that would be the end of those rebels. Not that I hate rebels or anything, but I'm just saying, realistically speaking, they don't have Ahsoka or Maul's help. They're going to get mowed down pretty quickly. What this would do in this story, though, is notify Obi-Wan and Anakin that Ahsoka is still out there and the Empire is still growing stronger. So I think that's important. Oh, and by the way, we basically erased the entirety of Solo a Star Wars story because Crimson Dawn doesn't exist anymore. So, you're welcome. So at this point, Luke and Leia are older. They're more powerful. They're being trained in the Force by Yoda, the best Jedi that ever lived, and they're getting ready. And I think once Obi-Wan and Anakin kind of hear about what's happening with Ahsoka, and they kind of realize that the Empire is weak, I think they're going to make their stand. So instead of the rise of the Empire, what you're going to end up happening, I think, at least in this scenario, is a duel on the Death Star. 5 Jedi against 1 Sith. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, Yoda, Luke Skywalker, and Leia Skywalker. And they're all going to face Palpatine, and they're going to destroy him. From there, it's just a matter of bringing together the rest of the rebels that are still out there led by Bail Organa, and so they can set up their new republic or whatever, and yeah. That's what would have happened if Maul hadn't died. Maybe. Kind of? I don't know. Seriously though, I think it's really, really interesting that this one seemingly insignificant change to Star Wars canon can create so many ripples throughout the entirety of the saga. Because all of a sudden you create this new, completely flipped narrative just by changing this one thing. And I think that's really cool. So yeah, that was my video on what if Darth Maul had actually died. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you guys want to see more of these what ifs? And again, if you guys have any suggestions, then please, please, please let me know in the comments down below. While you're at it, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you want to check out some more videos, then check out the videos on the screen right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.